Thank you for accommodating me. Yes, I'm Supervisor Jeff Sheehy. I represent District 8. I was appointed by Mayor Lee to take over from Scott Wiener when he went to the Senate. It's been an interesting year, to say the least. When the mayor appointed me, he appointed an independent person. I had, if you look at my history, I've been president of the Melt Club in 1996 and 1997, where we passed the historic, and actually I led in the creation and the defense of the historic Equal Benefits Ordinance, which says that domestic partners of employees of companies who contract with San Francisco get the same benefits as spouses. Since I've been on the board, two of the key things I've worked on is addressing youth homelessness, and I got just under $2 million with the mayor last year in the budget for rental subsidies, programming at the LGBT Center, both drop-in and meals 5 days a week. I went there yesterday. I went there on Thursday, sorry. And it's amazing. It's one of the few places where people can actually lie down. As I'm talking to some of the kids that use this as a respite center, they say the food is amazing. The thing is when I came in, young people who are 20% of the homeless on our streets only receive 7% of resources. Half of them are LGBTQ. Over 10% are HIV positive, and this has been a real passion of mine to make sure that we can get resources for this community. As I'm talking to them, more and more kids are coming because they're refugees from Trump America. They are not able to be their authentic selves in the places they are, and it's gotten worse because of Trump. 1 minute. The other thing I want to talk about is the minimum compensation ordinance. When I came on the board, I saw that this had not been updated, and thank you, Tom Amiano, for getting the living wage, I guess, 7 or 8 years ago. What this does is it pays $1.86 more an hour, so $3,600 a year, to people who work for city contractors. This is what it does. Two things. One is it does kind of disincline us to do contracting out, which I think is one of the worst things that we do as a city, is actually not have union people working for the city with city wages and city benefits. Instead, we go to nonprofits and we pay less. But it is also important funding for those workers who do some of the hardest jobs in our city. Well, I just want to put, because one little thing on because one of the things, if you looked at the minimum compensation ordinance, there was a huge anomaly. Nonprofit workers were part of it, but because we had difficult budget times, it was written in such a way, it said, nonprofit workers will get the minimum compensation ordinance if we don't have a budget deficit. And amazingly, every year we declare a budget deficit. So the real struggle now is to make sure nonprofit workers are included in the MCO. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So let's, do we have any DCCC members that would like to ask any questions from the committee? Anyone from the public or from the rest of the Democratic Party?
You mentioned homelessness and youth homelessness. I was just wondering, it strikes me that the jump from, it's so easy to be on the street. When youngsters are actually on the street to entering into long-term or permanent housing it's so great. There are different, some people talk about navigation centers, try to break up those steps. Any thoughts on how do you break up that steps and get someone who is a youth and they're homeless into, housing in a good place?
Well, first of all, I do think, and one of the things I've been at, it's like very confusing. Like people ask me about a navigation center, and I've been very insistent that we have a youth navigation center. So if you look at young people, one of the problems is, and this is one kid, I don't know if you see him, he sits in front of Walgreens in the Castro and wears kind of a animal costume, Skylar. So I got Skylar, I talked to him and I got him to go to this navigation center, which I just passed on Mission Street. And that's a tough place. And he went in there one night and I saw him like the next day. I said, Skylar, what happened? He said, man, I was scared to death. I was terrified. And we have money in this year's budget, $6.5 million, for a youth navigation center, but I have not been able to get that to happen. I've said, I'm happy to have it in District 8. But I'm not going to have another adult navigation center when what we need is a youth navigation center. And a lot of these kids come to the Castro. Why? Because they came to this city because they were queer. And of course they're going to go to the Castro. And I see these kids sleeping in doorways and like, where can we, but the first thing is to have somewhere safe, clean, and warm for people to go and to get them, especially with young people when they get here. Right now, our priority for homelessness is 10 years or more. One of the things that's making me nuts that I just found out a couple of weeks ago is that, okay, you're like freaking out on the street. It could be substance use, it could be mental health, it could be both. You go down to San Francisco General. We have you there, we treat you. So you may end up in a residential drug treatment place or in a mental health facility, where we treat and we treat. If you haven't been homeless 10 years or more, do you know what happens? You're released to the street. We just spent thousands of dollars helping you get back to where you were. And it was not always this way. So before we established the Department of Homelessness, the Department of Public Health had 2,000 beds exclusively for them. And what were the criteria for their beds? Chronicity. So are we seeing you again and again and again? And acuity. So how sick are you? So if you're sick and we get you well, for people I'm HIV positive. I'm the first HIV positive office holder in the city. If we no longer have beds for people with HIV, what do we think is going to happen to a homeless person with HIV? Are they going to be able to take their medications? And so, this is something I'm working on. I've gotten to be great friends with Hillary, with Supervisor Ronan. She's also addressing this piece. Like we'll have you go to a navigation. We'll take it. We'll bust up your reality. And camps are not the best places to be, but those are communities, as distorted as they may be. And we'll take you. We'll get you into a navigation center, but you can only be there 60 days. And if you're not homeless 10 years or longer, do you think that there's a bed that's waiting for you? Why on earth we take people off the streets, we get them somewhat stabilized, and then we release them? And what we've done is we've destroyed trust within the community. Like, there's not a sense that these are people like we are. How would you feel if we destroyed your, we plucked up your community, we popped you in a navigation center, and then we'd say, okay, bye. We wonder why we see so much acting out. Of course, we're traumatizing people who are on our streets because we're not treating them the same way we would want to be treated. We're not recognizing their humanity. And this is something Hillary and I sit next to her and we both go, because this boundary between our districts, the Mission and the Castro, is really very fluid. And we have a lot of the same individuals who are going back and forth, up and down, getting pushed by somebody into my district or getting pushed by somebody into her district, and we're not actually spending the resources, taking the time, showing the compassion to get people actually into a place where they can be and we can start to help them.
We have about 2 minutes. Maybe one question, if there's any questions left. Okay.
So, I don't know the number. Scott Wiener has this new transit policy, density building one, and I've been hearing from some of the other candidates that it kind of adversely impacts San Francisco, who has a very vibrant transit community, and it increases the density in those neighborhoods. What I'm hearing is that the surrounding areas aren't really going to participate, and they don't have transit communities. So transit rows that they're going to build these things. I just wondering what you think about that bill that he's working on.
Well, I was talking to Supervisor Peskin about this. I really think charter cities should be exempt, so that was my first thing, is for a charter city. But it upzones 96% of San Francisco. Right. And I don't think, I'm a big pro housing, so I'll just put that out there. I've got a 13-year-old daughter. I see her and her friends. They've got to be able to live in the city. So we need more housing, we need more affordable housing, middle income housing, because her teachers who teach, she's a public school kid, her teachers can't afford to live here. And it's getting harder and harder for them to teach. But upzoning the entire city is like crazy. I think I'm hearing Scott is amending it, but I really, you know, I think we're all working together with Scott to try to get something. More density around transit is a good thing. I mean, I would have no problem taking the 2 gas stations and the Pottery Barn and the Castro and building that up if we have sufficient affordable housing in there. I wouldn't mind more density. I'm in Glen Park, around Glen Park Park. That's just rational. Where you have transit and you can build up, you should do it. And you shouldn't put parking, you know, it should be no parking, just housing, and it's got to have it's got to have a good percentage of affordability. But I think everybody's kind of telling Scott, hold it, you can't upzone 96% of San Francisco.
Right.
We just can't, right?
Right, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
So I do want to remind everyone that all of our candidates were asked to fill out questionnaires. There are copies in the back if they haven't been passed out. And if you want to follow along online, they are also available on our website, sfdccc.org, under the tab Endorsements. You can take a look at all the questionnaires. Next, we'll be inviting up our Superior Court Judge candidates. First up, we have Judge Chang for seat number 4. This format will be 5 minutes total, 2 minutes for presentations and 3 minutes for Q&A.
And also, you should also tell people it's live streaming again.
Oh yeah, and we're being live streamed right now. So if you want to text your friends or tag it on your Facebook page, please let them know we're having people watch from home. Judge Chang.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Judge Andrew Chang, and I've been a judge for 9 years. This election for me is about seeing and vision. As a Chinese American who's grown up in the Midwest, I personally experienced discrimination, and I see those in my court who have faced systemic bias. As a son of immigrants from China, I see the teenager who's on my guardianship calendar seeking special immigrant juvenile status so that he can stay in this country. As someone who's dealt with elder care issues, I see the widow who needs conservatorship because she can't manage her finances, can't provide for her own medical care. And as someone who has had a family member struggle with mental health issues, I see the schizophrenics and others at San Francisco General Hospital when I presided over that calendar week after week. My vision for our court is one that moves in the direction of alternative dispute resolution. Civil litigation is just too expensive for most people. I had a case involving 9 siblings who were fighting for 3 years about their probate and property issues. I spent 3 days mediating that case, and as a result of that effort, we were able to avoid a 3-week trial and bring a win-win healing to that family, as opposed to someone wins and someone loses and the loser appeals. Finally, my vision for our court is one of being a foothold for others. And by that, for myself, that means I've mentored students from San Francisco State University. I've had law students as law clerks, many from diverse and underprivileged backgrounds. I regularly mentor those who are seeking judgeships. We have the most diverse court in the state of California. 21 out of 50 judges, 42% of our court, are judges of color. I'm proud to be one of them, and that's something I believe in passionately. I ask that you join Governor Jerry Brown and all 4 mayoral candidates who have endorsed my candidacy, including 3 on the committee here. Thank you for taking the time to meet with each of us. We really appreciate your service to the community, and thank you for your support.
DCCC members, if any of you have any questions. Member De Jesus.
So every time we look at the statistics in San Francisco, even though the African American population, I think, is 6%, they're one of the largest populations in the criminal justice system. But more importantly, the youth are. I think most African American girls are in juvenile hall and stuff. And so, what do you think? What do you think about that, and how can we remedy that particular situation?
We do what we can as a court to provide all sorts of alternatives to incarceration. From all our specialty courts, we do what we can to get out, as certain members of our bench have, for truancy programs, for outreach to the community through high school education, through our day in court, having people come through to learn about our courtroom, to welcome and especially our community events, even where Judge Jackson invited us to the Third Baptist Church. We met members of the community. I answered probably a good 20, 30 minutes of probate questions from that community. And I think it's all important. It all matters. And as judges, even though we are isolated in some ways because we're dealing with the cases before us, we're not isolated in our outreach. And that is part of our job description.
We have 2 minutes left. Are there any questions from the members? Okay, any other questions from the public? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we would like to invite up Phoenix Streets, also going for seat number 4 of the Superior Court Judge.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. As a child growing up in the Western Addition here in San Francisco, I experienced poverty and violence firsthand. As a child living in Beebe, Arkansas, I experienced poverty and racism firsthand. My 18 years at the Public Defender's Office have been full. I gotta slow it down here. My time in the Public Defender's Office has been amazing. I've got to help. I had the opportunity to assist so many people. And the way that it's done in our office is the way that it should be done in court. It is called a holistic approach. A person comes before you in need. You know they're charged with a crime. Okay, should they be punished for that crime? How do we stop the recidivism? You have to look at the person as a whole. We have collaborative courts. The person has a problem with alcohol, mental health issues, don't know how to get a job. The courts can provide the resources to help those people get jobs, get off the street, help them with their addiction, and break the cycle of recidivism. I believe ideology matters. When you talk about diversity, it's not simply a matter of what the person's race or ethnicity is. It's also about how they think, how they view things. What is their perspective? How are they going to treat the people that come before them? How do they see, if they even do see, the person that's in front of them, and think what's good for the person and what is good for the greater community?
Thank you.
Q&A from DCCC members. Do we have anyone? Oh, Member Davis.
So why did you decide to run for judge?
You know,
Microphone.
you know, we have a lot of issues, and there's a lot of times where we disagree with the way things are being run in the courts. And so rather than continue to complain, decided to act. And ideology is important. Do you want to, you have to know your judges and where they're coming from. Do they come from an organization that promoted torture, that authorized torture? Do you want a judge who has been a part of an organization that engaged in wireless, warrantless, it's expanded, I should say, expanded warrantless searches of American citizens? They don't have to go in front of a court to get the warrant. They just start their surveillance. Ideology matters.
We have 2 minutes left. Any other questions? Okay, great.
So you just mentioned wireless taps and FISA courts. In this role that you're running for, how would you interact with the FISA courts, or how would this election be affected in any way by the FISA courts?
Sorry, I didn't mean to say wireless. What I meant to say was warrantless. And as judges, we have to decide whether or not to sign a warrant. Because police officers, they'll come in, they'll have an affidavit, and they'll say, this person has committed, or we believe this person has committed a crime, and we need to either follow them around, get a search warrant to go into their house so we can search for weapons or any evidence of a crime, or we can search their car for any evidence of a crime, or their phone. And the judge has to read that affidavit, decide whether or not it complies or comports with the law, and deciding whether or not that he or she should sign the warrant and allow the officers to go in and conduct a search. So that's how the judges actually deal with warrants.
Could I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, just really quick, 30 seconds.
Yeah, so are you saying that you don't think the current judge has done that fairly?
Has done that fair?
Reviewed warrants and said it's lawful for this officer to go into this space when it should not be permitted.
I can tell you that I know that the person I'm running against was presented with evidence that an officer had presented an affidavit to him that was full of lies, and that judge did nothing about it.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Judge Carnow for seat number 7. Just a reminder, 5 minutes total, 2 minutes for presentations and 3 minutes for question and answer. Thank you. Judge Carnow.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here. Good afternoon. Nice to see everybody. I've been a judge and a lawyer for 35 years, and I've spent that entire time trying to make the courts more transparent and more affordable. I know firsthand as a judge and as a lawyer what it costs to get through the legal system. So I have advocated in the legislature. I have rewritten the rules of California courts. I have worked on committees to change the system and really improve access to justice. My pro bono work as a lawyer was with MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense Fund. I was on the board of the Legal Aid Society and handled guardianships for communities of color here in San Francisco. The last case I had as a lawyer was suing Microsoft to make sure that people who were consumers of their software were not harmed by the monopolistic practices of that company. As a judge, I issued the order in the City College case. That was the order that kept the college open, gave it the breathing space that it needed to get its house in order, and it worked. And we now have City College, which is something that is serving the teachers of this community, it is serving the union of this community, and it is serving the thousands and thousands of students in the community. I started working on bail reform in 2008. And there is nobody in this state who has done more work on bail reform and has done more to set forth the analytical reasons why the current system doesn't work and why it discriminates against people who don't have enough income than I. I wrote the paper. The federal judges and the state judges who are now challenging the state bail system have been relying on my work. I've been doing implicit bias, and there's more information on the questionnaire. I have been trusted to do the most complex cases in the state. I'm trusted by the Supreme Court to be on its Supreme Court Ethics Committee. I'm trusted to teach new and experienced judges, and I've been endorsed not only by Governor Jerry Brown, but by the leaders of the Democratic Party, both here and statewide. There's much more work to do with respect to bias. There's a lot more work to do to improve the legal system, and I would appreciate your endorsement, and I ask for your vote. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to take questions. Very happy.
Member Galata.
Hi, Judge.
Hi.
Question for you about your 2011 ruling to evict 75-year-old Ernesto
Sure.
Hernandez from his North Beach apartment. Can you explain that?
Absolutely. That actually was not my ruling. I don't know why people would mistake what was going on there. The 2011 ruling was a Court of Appeal ruling, an appellate division ruling that affirmed me. My ruling was a year earlier. My ruling had been this. There was a landlord-tenant dispute. And the landlord said, I have some house rules here which are part of the deal. If the tenant had said I had something that I sent to the tenant as part of the deal, I would have done the same thing, which is to let the jury decide what the agreement was between the two parties. So the only decision I made in that case was to allow the jury to look at it. I never saw the case again. I was affirmed on appeal. Some other judge, about a year or 2 years later, evicted the gentleman who actually had conceded in the Superior Court that he would lose the case. Let me address the real issue here, which is whether or not I am biased against landlords or tenants. Mark Hushman, who is a lawyer who has spent probably more time and is a tenants' rights lawyer, has endorsed me and has noted that he has won multiple cases in my court on behalf of his tenant clients, including a substantial fees award that I imposed against the landlord. So the idea that I'm biased one way or the other on these cases is completely false.
We have about 2 minutes left. Any other questions?
Yeah. So and there's been a lot of media reports going back and forth and around sort of this unprecedented attack of public defenders running for office and challenging. Can you talk a little bit about your feelings about the challenge of sitting judges?
I don't have a problem with it at all. I think it's fine. We have a constitution here. The oath I took specifically was to defend the Constitution of California and the United States. So I don't have a problem with that at all. Anybody who wants to run is free to run. So this is fine. It gets me out. The question is, why are they running, and is there a reason to vote for them? The real question that you have to decide is, who would you rather have as a judge? I welcome the race. Thank you so much.
Really quick, do we have time left?
We have
1 minute? Yeah.
So you mentioned that in 2008 you started working on the bail reform.
Yeah.
What was your what compelled you to
Because
pick up
I
the
was
bail
sitting
issue?
in the Hall of Justice issuing these decisions that were in conformity with state law. The people of California actually passed an amendment to the Constitution of the state requiring the judges to do which is now the subject of attack. And I was realizing that what was happening is that if somebody was poor, they wouldn't be able to make the bail that I was compelled to impose. If somebody was rich, that was a different sort of situation. So I realized that the actual structure of the bail system we have really doesn't address the income inequalities that we have in our community. And so I researched it, I looked at the legislative history, I did a tremendous amount of empirical research on all the studies that were happening with bail across the United States. I wrote this paper, and it's now the paper that is being used by the courts to overturn our system, which I'm very proud of.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have Mary Evangelista for seat number 7. Maria, sorry, pardon, have a typo. Maria Evangelista.
Maria.
Good afternoon. I have a moral obligation to run for office. When my parents came here from Mexico in the 1960s to work as farm workers, they risked their lives and almost died several times so that they could be born in this, so I could be born in this country that believes in the presumption of innocence. And in order to avoid deportation, they came up to San Francisco and landed in the South of Market area on 9th and Bryant, only 2 blocks away from what we used to call as little kids as the Hall of Injustice. And my parents never went to school and didn't speak English. But my community, the LGBT and the leather community, taught me to have a voice. They taught me about pride, and they taught me to fight discrimination. And my community, St. Paul's, San Francisco State University, the District Attorney's Office of San Francisco under Terrence Hallinan, was my community that raised me and allowed me to become one of the first Mexican-American women to graduate from Vanderbilt Law School. And when I graduated, I came back because I have a moral obligation to give back to San Francisco. As 25 years working in the Hall of Justice, I've seen personally that system is broken. There's recidivism, and minorities are disproportionately charged. I have a moral obligation to preserve judicial independence. How can we have judicial independence when the majority of the bench are prosecutors who used to fight the presumption of innocence? How can we have judicial independence if the bench does not accurately represent the minority populations that it serves? I would be the first Mexican-American woman to get appointed, to get elected to the San Francisco bench. Now, Carnell is not a member of our community. He lives in Marin, he drives in, and he's evicted some of the most vulnerable members of our population. And I can talk about that case further. Thank you.
Any questions from our members?
Speaking to your last point, Maria, I would
Yes.
like you to talk more about the evictions.
So with the eviction case, Justice Carnell is saying that he didn't have a role, but I think that what's really important is that there was 2 articles that came out in the New York Times and with Randy Shaw that talk about actually how important his role was, which is creating a loophole where landlords can more easily evict tenants. And that is what happened in this case. Mr. Hernandez was a 75-year-old, elderly, gay, Latino man who was evicted. The case went to the appellate division, which was Carnell's appellate division. And he sat out of that decision. He was there all day in the courtroom and then sat out while the other 2 members of the appellate division upheld his own decision. So ask yourselves, is it restorative for somebody that's not a member of your community to come in, drive into San Francisco, evict our most vulnerable, and then drive home? When we have a system that is so broken, and you know it's broken, don't you need a member of your community to stand up and jump in and say, I'm gonna pay it forward, I'm gonna apply the laws equally, I'm gonna create an atmosphere where we can have restorative justice? Thank you for that question. And I can answer any other questions about the City College case or...
We have about a minute and a half. Probably one more question.
Yes,
So what would you do differently?
In,
If you were sitting on the bench, how would you do it differently?
yeah, so because as a public defender, I've actually had As a public defender, I've actually had a lot of training in alternative and specialty courts, especially in recidivism. I'm in Veterans Court, and one of the key factors in terms of recidivism is that incarceration can be extremely effective within the first 10 to 14 days. After that, it's counterproductive, and that's scientifically based principles. As public defenders, we have been fighting the fight to get rid of bail reform. Judge Carnell did not do anything for bail reform except write a paper. And what I need to point out is the Superior Court judges, and people don't know this, I need to make sure people know this, the Superior Court judges actually set the bail system that was found unconstitutional, including Judge Carnell. He wrote a paper about the bail system and then never did anything about it as a judge. He never once released anybody and said, I'm releasing you, sir, because you are being unconstitutionally detained. So don't let them mislead you. That is not true. But as a judge, I have the special training and understanding that there's scientific principles behind recidivism. And I am a member of my community, and nobody's going to care about my community as much as one of your own. So that's why I'm asking for your support, and let's make history. Thank you.
So just a reminder, questionnaires are available in the back and online for those of you following at home on the live stream, www.sfdccc.org. Sorry, sfdemocrats.org, and it's under the endorsements tab. Next, I would like to invite up Judge Lee, Cynthia Lee, for seat 9, I believe.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for inviting us here this afternoon to speak with you about our candidacy. My name is Cynthia Lee, and I am running for re-election as judge. A little bit about my background. My grandparents immigrated here from China around the turn of the century. Both of them were detained by the immigration authorities. I have the transcript of my grandmother's interrogation, which was extensive. She was incarcerated for several months while the investigation went through. I was raised in Chinatown in New York City, went to public schools in New York, and my dad was a restaurant worker and employed in a hardware store. For most of the time that I was growing up, he held down 2 jobs to support our family. My mom was a clerk. I earned a scholarship and then worked my way through law school, paying for it by myself. I've been a judge for about 20 years, and in 2013 and 14, I was the first Asian female presiding judge in the entire history of the San Francisco Superior Court. In that capacity, I founded Veterans Justice Court, which my previous speaker alluded to. I founded that, and also the Truancy Action Program to help reduce truancy in public schools by going out to public schools. Judges actually went out to public schools to work with parents to reduce truancy. I also worked in the domestic violence court, and I instituted the first mandatory training for all judges in domestic violence lethality. I wanted to just give you a little idea of the endorsements. I have some of the same endorsements as my colleagues. I'm endorsed by Governor Brown, by Nancy Pelosi, by all the state legislators from California, for all candidates for mayor, including many of the members of the Board of Supervisors, including Supervisor Peskin, all 50 judges of our court, and the judges of the California Appellate Court, First Division. They're the court that reviews our work and tells us if we've made a mistake legally or reverses us in case we have. I respectfully ask for your endorsement and your help in this election process. Thank you. Questions?
Yes. Questions from DCCC members first, and then we'll open it up.
Yes.
You've been on the bench for quite a while, and things are changing, like we have the DACA, we have the bail thing. What do you think the court can do different or better going forward into the future?
The courts are involved in bail reform from the top down. The Chief Justice convened a task force to study the issue of bail reform. Our own presiding judge, Terry Jackson, was a member of that. I've talked to her a lot about some of the recommendations that have come through. Many of the things that exist with regard to bail are by statute, by constitution, by law. Some of those laws have to change. As I understand, there's a movement in Sacramento right now to readdress the bail issue and to readdress the factors that should be considered. And as that progresses, obviously the judges in our court will be participatory in that effort. But we are kind of a top-down organization with the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court kind of setting the guidelines and the rules. We're not freewheelers. That's the way the system is set up. But I can tell you that we are discussing bail reform, and there are a lot of judges, certainly who come from, like myself, who come from backgrounds not of wealth, but who certainly understand the issues of economic limitations, such as the limitations that faced my parents.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions from DCCC members? Okay, other questions from other club members?
I'm sorry for talking so fast, but I was told to talk like a New Yorker.
Thank you so much.
Next we have Elizabeth Zara, also for seat number 9, sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the privilege to be here and present myself and my point of views. As many of you know, I am an attorney, and I've been living in San Francisco for 23 years, and I've been working in San Francisco for 23 years. I'm also a real estate broker. I currently serve as Judge Pro Tem for our San Francisco Superior Court. I also serve as a commissioner for San Francisco Assessment Appeals Board, so I hear disputes between the city and the taxpayers. And I also practice law. In my practice, I serve before the state and federal court. I have tried jury and non-jury cases. I have argued before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals successfully, and also the state appellate court. So I don't believe my background is an issue. The reason I'm running is I'm absolutely, and not only me, but many and most of the attorneys who practice law in San Francisco, we're absolutely fed up with our e-filing system. It is a disaster. My opponent, Judge Lee, implemented that system. We have been begging the court to fix it. They don't. Finally, I have to do something about it, and I'm getting up here to go there and fix it. I'm also concerned about ratings that I've seen about my opponent, and I'm worried about what is going on in this race with regards to lack of judicial temperament. Our judges here failed to say a word about San Francisco Superior Court posting on its website, issuing a letter supporting and endorsing them. If they are unbiased, and if they are actually believing in enforcing the law, they should stand up, at the minimum apologize to us for such a behavior. That hasn't happened. In fact, because they're benefiting, they're staying quiet. That silence shows bias. If you have any questions, I'll be able to answer.
That was a lot. So if you were on the bench, what would you do differently?
The first thing I will do is definitely work on fixing the e-filing system. We're in Silicon Valley. We have access to one of the best teams in the world to come in and fix our e-filing system, which is a disaster. Second thing is, our e-filing system does not go to our criminal court. It's only limited to civil. So we still send people to the clerk's office with papers to actually file records in Silicon Valley. We should set the standard for the entire nation. We shouldn't be failing them. That's what I would do, the first thing I would do. And I also bring in our law students. I would develop a program with our law schools for credit for them to come in and help our clerks who don't know what they're doing and help them support it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You mentioned that there was something posted to a website that was improper. Were any of the judges that are up for re-election today, did they have any responsibility in that?
Absolutely do, because they are part of that system. It is their duty as judges, if they want to be unbiased, to stand up and speak up about something that is wrong and improper. It's their duty to do that. In fact, on their website, they have listed as endorsers all 50 judges of San Francisco Superior Court and First District Appellate Court. The way it's worded, it's misleading to a layperson. The way it's worded, it implies that San Francisco Superior Court and the Appellate Court is endorsing them. That is not how our system works. If the individual judges are endorsing them, they should be listed as individual judges. It should not be listed as San Francisco Superior Court. That's a problem.
That is a problem. We have 1 minute. We have time for one more question if there's anyone that has a question. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have Quixon Malouf. Hope I got that right.
No, that's all right.
It's all right, I tried.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Quizon Malouf, San Francisco Deputy Public Defender. I am running for seat number 9, San Francisco Superior Court Judge. I am a born and raised right here in San Francisco, a San Francisco native. I attended public schools throughout my entire education. Why am I running for San Francisco Superior Court Judge? First of all, I did send in my application to the governor's office, just like these governors did, just like these judges did 5 years ago. And my application sat and sat and sat for 5 years without a single word. So I decided if I want it, I need to go get it. And so that's what I'm doing. The San Francisco bench, as liberal as San Francisco is, the bench is not. 50 years ago next month, Dr. Martin Luther King said a speech, and he said people should be judged based on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. It is unfortunate that in San Francisco, we still judge people based on the content, based on the color of their skin and not their content of their character. My job as a judge is to be unbiased and judge people based on what they've done and not what they look like. With that, we have time for questions.
Anyone from the DCC?
Yeah, why don't we just ask you, so what would you do different? You've been in the system for a while. What would you do different if you're on the bench?
Thank you. I've been in the system for 17 years protecting people's constitutional rights. And what I would do differently is partly what I just said. I believe every single person who comes into the courtroom has a right to have a chance for rehabilitation. One of these judges that we're running against sentenced a 25-year-old man to life in prison. That verdict was overturned on appeal based on judicial error. I was the defense attorney in that case. In close to 100 jury trials, none of my cases have been overturned on appeal based upon ineffective assistance of counsel. I know what I'm doing. Also, one of the judges in this room sentenced someone to 14 years state prison because they had less than a gram of heroin. That is not rehabilitation. Judge in this room sentenced someone to 4 years state prison for having drugs in their car. A person who was never arrested before. 4 years state prison. That should have been a probation deal. That is not rehabilitation. And that's what I'm about, rehabilitation.
Before I take your question, is there anyone else from DCCC? None? Okay, great.
Hey, are these judges Democrats?
So that's an excellent question. How these judges different? So let me talk about the judge who I'm running against. She was appointed by Pete Wilson in 1998. At the time she was appointed by Pete Wilson, she was a registered Republican. She sat on the bench for 20 years and was undisclosed, refused to state what her party was. For 20 years, she refused to state. Then I submitted my papers, and now, as of 2-3 weeks ago, she's now a registered Democrat. I don't think we want those kind of people to judge us. San Francisco has a right to determine who their judges are, not someone in Sacramento. So you decide, is that the kind of person you want judging you? Thank you. We still got maybe one more question, 50 seconds?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yes.
Who's the judge in the room? I know you said the judge in the room that sentences people with harsh sentences. Can you name that judge?
Yes, I can. So it was Judge Ross that sentenced a 25-year-old kid to life in prison, and that case was overturned on appeal. It was Judge Cynthia Lee that sentenced someone to 14 years state prison for less than a gram of heroin. It was also Judge Cynthia Lee who sentenced someone to 4 years state prison for transportation of drugs, and he was never arrested before. No arrest before that date. 2 seconds. All right, we're done. Thank you very much.
Next we have Judge Jeffrey Ross for the seat of number 11 for the Superior Court Judge.
Good afternoon. I am Judge Jeff Ross. I've spoken to many of you, and I spoke at the last meeting. I've lived in The Hague since 1978. In high school and in college, I worked at a law firm in New York that represented Planned Parenthood and other abortion rights organizations. That was from 1968 to 1973, and in 1973, Roe versus Wade was decided as a result of the work that that law firm and those organizations did. I went to law school and I volunteered on death penalty cases to end the death penalty. I then worked for the Santa Clara County Public Defender's Office and the ACLU. Upon graduating, I joined a 2-lawyer criminal defense firm where I also tried child custody cases and civil cases, and I always take cases as a volunteer for the ACLU. As a San Francisco Superior Court judge for almost 9 years, I insist that everyone in my courtroom is respected. Those of you on the DCCC have received a letter signed by 55 criminal defense lawyers. These are people who represent criminal defendants, as do the public defenders, and they said they want me to remain as a judge. They want me to be deciding their cases. And that's in part because I work for Alternatives to Incarceration. I am the judge in the Veterans Justice Court who released people into treatment instead of incarceration. I am the judge who is working now with people on felony probation to get them into treatment instead of going to prison. I have been endorsed by many of you, including Supervisors Kim, Fewer, Peskin, Tang, and Yi, along with the other people mentioned. I'd like you to join the public officials, the judges, and the defense attorneys who have endorsed me to allow me to continue to serve San Francisco, the criminal courts, the criminal defendants, and to continue to work to keep people in treatment and not incarceration. I'd be happy to take your questions, including ones in response to some of the comments that were made earlier. Yes, Mr. Rocca.
Please, yes. Could you expound on the accusations that have been made?
Yes, certainly. I've tried 92 criminal cases. One case was reversed on appeal, and it was that case. Let me tell you about Mr. Quizon's co-counsel in that case. Her name is Brooke Jenkins. She is an African-American Latina woman. She has written a letter on my behalf saying how fairly I tried that case. I did rule in that case on a motion by the people not to give an instruction that was requested, and I was reversed on that. I reviewed the evidence. In my view, the instruction was not valid, and so I didn't give it, and it was reversed. The sentence was dictated by law. Once Mr. Quizon Malouf's client was convicted, of first-degree murder because he and 2 other people broke into a garage and killed the resident of that house, I had no choice but to sentence him to life in prison. It was reversed, and the case was then resolved later because the homeowner was killed by the gun of one of the 3 people who broke into the house. Other questions?
2 more minutes. Do we have any other questions from any of the members?
Yes, hello.
Hi. So you mentioned the veteran, the work and the rehabilitation.
Yes.
So you've been on the bench for a while. I'm just going to ask the same question. So looking forward, what do you see that the Superior Court judges can do better, or
Expand the treatment courts. I am the judge who's the chair of our collaborative courts committee. Ms. Evangelista knows that because she was the public defender in my court, in the Veterans Court, for over a year and a half. What I want to do is to take the same services that we're giving to veterans and expand them to people who are on felony probation, because those people have violated probation and normally would go to prison. Instead, what I want to do is to get caseworkers to get them the same kind of treatment that was in the Veterans Court so that we can keep them in the community, get them treated and not incarcerated. I do want to add one thing. The 50 judges who endorsed us individually. Every one of them signed an endorsement. 19 justices endorsed us individually. They signed an endorsement. They are individuals. They are 69 people who endorsed us because they know our work. They review our cases. And as I said, in my case, only one of my cases has ever been reversed on appeal.
1 minute for another question. If there's any final questions.
Thank you very much. I hope you'll endorse me because I'd like to continue expanding my efforts to keep people in treatment and not in prison. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Vicki Solis for seat number 11.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. We all know, we sit here, the courts are broken, the criminal justice system is broken. There is disproportionate sentencing based on race. The studies show it. All the studies show it. In San Francisco, disproportionate sentencing. Who sentences people? These judges. We need equality under the law in San Francisco. We need San Francisco judges who have San Francisco values. I embody the change we all want in the criminal justice system. I embody that change. My parents came here with me. I was 1 year old. We were undocumented. I grew up undocumented. I know what it's like. I will be the first formerly undocumented judge sitting in the Superior Court of San Francisco and maybe all of California. I will be the first lesbian Latina. People say it's not your time. It is my time. Just because I'm a woman of color, just because I'm a lesbian, doesn't mean it's not my time. It is my time. I am standing up. I am standing up for justice in this city and county of San Francisco because that's what we need and that's what we have been lacking. We all know the system is broken. We all know it. Let's fix it and let's make a change. I need your endorsement, each and every one of you. We need a change in this system. The judges have done nothing about bail reform. You don't write a paper and do nothing for 9 years. They have done nothing. We've gone to federal court now 3 times in the last month. To get their decisions overturned. They have done nothing but incarcerate people of color. I've stood side by side for 22 years with young girls who were trafficked, victims of human trafficking. I have stood side by side with people from San Francisco. I know the struggle. We need judges who are unbiased. Thank you.
Open it for question and answer. DCCC members, are there any questions from you? Member De Jesus?
So I've been asking the same question. So, you know the system, you've been doing it for a long time. Well, you know, I guess kind of 2-part. What motivated you to run, and what would you do different?
My sister-in-law was a heroin addict, and she got 10 years of prison. And we had to pay money and raise money to get her out of prison, recall her sentence, and hire a lawyer. And I said, money shouldn't buy justice. Money shouldn't buy justice. So I went to law school. And I went to the public defender's office. And I worked day in and day out, standing next to folks, representing them and fighting for their constitutional rights. As a judge, I will protect their constitutional rights. This is what motivates me. Just what motivated me then motivates me now to serve my community. And as far as what I would do different, is that the second part? Restorative justice programs. We don't have them in San Francisco. We have collaborative courts. We don't have restorative justice in the juvenile system. If someone commits a crime, do they ever go and talk to the people who they have hurt? No, we don't have that. And that's what I mean by restorative justice, about the victims of the crime. We need to do something different. I'm a homeowner, I'm a mom, I'm a lesbian. I get the sides that are going on in the criminal justice system. And I think we need to expand collaborative courts, but we need restorative justice. And we need judges to get educated on implicit bias. When you are implicitly biased and you're angry and you're upset and you're rushed, you make decisions that go in favor of your bias. And that's what we have here. Someone who gets triggered and does something that goes in favor of their bias. And we need to stop. And I am standing up. I'm standing up.
We have about 1 minute, so we have maybe time for one last question. Member Braca?
There have been a couple of cases that have been brought up that have seemed controversial. Are there any judgments that have been made by the judge that you're challenging that you would have done differently?
I can't speak to what I would have done differently in this particular case because the canons prohibit me from doing that. But I will tell you that it's one thing to take classes on implicit bias. It's another thing to militate against it in your being. You have to do more than just take a class. You have to actually be conscious of it. And you have to be patient. And you can't be rushed. And you can't be angry. And judicial temperament is at issue here. I've written my story on medium.com. Look at it, Nikki Solis. And you will see what motivates me. I can't speak to a particular case that is prohibited. But what I could tell you is everybody who comes in my courtroom will be equal under the law. And I think where I come from, I can do that. I know I can do that. That's what's important about our courts. The people who come before it, they have to know that and believe it. And it's not happening in San Francisco, and the statistics don't lie. The statistics don't lie. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're going to take a short break. I think we're going to reconvene around 2 o'clock, and then we'll hear from the propositions shortly thereafter. Thank you.
Scott. Wait, I'm gonna go talk to her right now. Yeah. What I don't want is I don't want to. There we go. Yeah, have you been here all day?
London showed up there, London was there.
It's really tough, man. There's a lot of tough decisions to do in the election.
I hear both sides, and I feel like you make a good point, and you make a good point, and you make a good point too. Well, but I mean, at the end of the day, come June or November, you're voting. Are you going to skip that one, or are you going to vote no? I mean, sometimes you might just say, well, that's really good. What this shows is that the level of interaction with a typical citizen, we don't see, there are 800,000 people. Yeah. Or at least let's say 400 vote. It's like you're an employee at a company, but you don't hire your CEOs. You don't hire your accountants. You want to make sure that they can take your company in the right direction. Yeah, definitely. And I think it helps them too, because they get better feedback. And then maybe they can get This is what they should do. My friend, they should Similarly, payers and I think that's, public library to make the first year. She came off as concerned. That can also be the case to my first establishment it's tough.
Is he killing your bed yet?
You got a thing for supervisors, don't you?
There's not a whole lot. So we just drafted this yesterday, so we can get
Hello, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us through a long day, but if we can get people to start sitting, we're going to start on our last section of the day where we're going to deal with ballot measures. So I'm giving you guys a few minutes to finish your conversations, have another cup of coffee. Otherwise, I'm going to start like making that piercing, annoying sound.
Hello, everybody. We're getting started. Thank
All right, everybody, so we're going to get started on our last portion of the day, and we're going to deal with ballot measures. And the format for ballot measures is that each side is going to get 5 minutes, 2 minutes for presentation, then we're going to open it up for 3 minutes for question and answer. We do have a schedule that people are supposed to be here for, but I understand that some folks came early, some folks aren't here yet, so we may just kind of take folks who are here, give them an opportunity to get here and get out quickly. I'm just going to make a quick call to see if anybody's here for Prop E yet. All right, do we have both sides, or just you guys are just the you're the proponents? All right, we might wait until the opponents come just so we can keep you guys together. Prop G. Take. We're
gonna wait on Prop G. We're gonna wait on Prop G.
Okay, then Supervisor Peskin, would you like to come up here and talk about your Proposition B? So this is Proposition B, prohibiting the appointment, well, you can talk about it actually. Commissioners without conflict.
Thank you, Francis. Prop B is earth-shattering. It's going to change everything in San Francisco. I'm just kidding. It is a modest piece of charter reform, really to increase people's perception that San Francisco government is clean. Interestingly enough, when I first became a supervisor with Sophie Maxwell 18 years ago, our then mayor, Willie Brown, had a rule. Wasn't a law, it was a rule. And the rule is very simple, which was the moment anybody took a paper out to run for local office, whether school board, college board, board of supervisors, treasurer, assessor, you name it, that individual needed to resign from any commission that they'd been appointed to in San Francisco city government. It applies to a handful of people a year. Mayor Brown, after two terms, his successor, Gavin Newsom, did it a lot in his first term, less so in his second term. Mayor Lee, not so much. And what's this about? We've had instances where a sitting member of the Planning Commission ran for supervisor while approving projects, while taking donations from individuals that appeared before the Planning Commission. That does not really enhance people's view about San Francisco government being clean and ethical. Even smaller commissions give out contracts, whether it's the Rec and Park Commission for redoing parks or the Library Commission for branch library remodels and the acquisition of new equipment. We want to make sure that everybody sees San Francisco as the clean government that I actually think that it is. Prop B has no opposition, and I hope that the DCCC will see fit to endorse it.
All right. Any questions from DCCC members? Any questions from the general public?
So it's not that this has been rampant recently, it's more just logically this is a thing to have.
Yes, no, like I said, this is not earth-shattering, and it will apply to a handful of people a year. And by the way, historically, like for instance, when Raphael Mandelman ran for supervisor in 2010, he voluntarily resigned. The other thing I should say is this is not just about the mayor's appointments, because the Board of Supervisors makes appointments, the President of the Board of Supervisors makes appointments, the City Attorney makes appointments, so this would apply to all appointments. And as you know, some appointments are what are called pleasure appointments, i.e. their appointing authority can fire them any day for any reason, and some of them are just cause appointments, wherein the second that individual takes the oath of office, they cannot be removed for any reason except for corruption. Or malfeasance. So this would just make that clear, makes it a level playing field for everybody. Yes, sir.
So, am I correct to understand, since this is a June ballot measure, it affects candidates for November? Does it affect anyone for the November election?
Does it affect anybody for the November? If it was passed in June, it would take effect upon certification, which is usually 30 days later, so that would be July. I don't know if there are any commissioners who are running for any office in November. And by the way, filing deadlines are not yet closed. So people can file for November elections in some cases up until June, and in other cases up until August. So it may.
Thank you very much. All right, and the next folks we're going to bring up is the proponents for Proposition E.
Thank you very much. My name is Bob Gordon. I'm a volunteer with SF Kids versus Big Tobacco, and Tahara is here. You'll notice in her hand is a basket of, what is it? Is it candy?
Oreos.
Oreo cookie double stuff, vanilla vapors, mango leaf, Swisher sweets in chocolate, strawberry, etc. This is the new tobacco industry. R.J. Reynolds Tobacco, the major funder to put this referendum on the ballot, wants our young people in their teens to sample tobacco for the first time and have it taste good, that they don't turn a different color and feel terrible of it. It makes the poison go down smoothly. Okay, this is what they're doing. So just to back up, how this got on the ballot is Supervisor Malia Cohen introduced a landmark legislation which would eliminate the sale of all candy-flavored tobacco in San Francisco. It was supposed to take effect April 1st. It was unanimous with our supervisors. Every supervisor understood that this is big tobacco and what they do. 1 minute left. And so then enter R.J. Reynolds Tobacco that never takes these things sitting down. And they said, you know, what can we do? They spent $1 million to ask people to sign to force this to the ballot for June 5th. So here we are defending the great work, unanimous work of our supervisors, and we thank each and every one of them. And yet we have to defend against R.J. Reynolds Tobacco, all their lies, all their millions that are coming. So I hope that was clear enough with 30 seconds. That includes time for questions? Oh, okay. I could have said more. San Francisco Unified School District is so important that I think we have 57,000 high school students in the district, and 32.5% had used an electronic smoking device product, which is basically flavored with these candy flavors. It's so alarming what's happening right here. That was a figure from 2015.
So any questions from DCCC members? Thank you for that presentation.
Yes, over there.
All right, Petra?
Yeah, so I hear all these people who are using this saying that the vape is like less toxic, less addictive, and then but I hear that that's not true. Is that correct?
That's right. And there are individuals who have great stories, and that's wonderful if they can do whatever they can to free themselves from nicotine. However, I wanted to just point to UCSF just had a study from 2016. Actually finding that the analysis from UCSF found that adult smokers who used e-cigarettes are actually 28% less likely to stop smoking cigarettes. I think the reason is it maintains nicotine in the brain, and it just keeps going, and when it's convenient to smoke something like this, you use this. When it's convenient to smoke a combustible cigarette, you do that. but it maintains nicotine through the lifespan.
But does it have more than nicotine in the vapor is what I meant? Is it got chemicals as
Yes.
well? See, and that's the problem. People think it doesn't have the chemicals.
There's a battery typically in there, a heating element that heats up the plastics, the glues, and the metals of these devices. And those, UCSF tells us, are aerosolized particles that get breathed in and then breathed out. That's why we're so thankful that Senator Mark Leno had statewide legislation to say that if you can only use those devices at a place where you could use combustible cigarettes to protect people from the harm from them, and also give the attention to the fact that they're not safe.
Right. Okay. Member Baraka?
I think my question, I think I'm fine. I think my question is kind of similar to Petrus in that as a proponent of harm reduction, I think that cigarettes are bad, okay? I'll put that out there. But I think that sometimes people need options in terms of step down. So I want to know more about the science as it relates to harm reduction and how it can help folks. So how does that jive with this whole policy about flavored vapor products and all of that?
Right, so stepping down, the idea is, I actually am a co-facilitator for the Last Drag, which is the free quit smoking class in San Francisco for people who are ready to quit. And what's always recommended is those helpers that are from the FDA that are approved by the Food and Drug Administration that have been proved to be safe. So if someone wants to use nicotine replacement therapy as they're finding a different way to free themselves from tobacco, that's typically what's recommended.
But those have also been challenged, saying that those don't really work and that keep people having nicotine. So it's just the same kind of
I think
science.
you've said it. Nicotine is the issue, certainly, and you know, this is the way on the front load. It's an on-ramp basically for nicotine for life. And I wish the 50 and 60-year-olds in our class, my contemporaries, didn't have to deal with something that started as a kid, basically as teenagers, when most of them started. But I appreciate the question. That debate will continue, I'm sure.
And then we have our final question.
Just a quick question, because I know the other side has said this to me, and as a former smoker, I can tell you that whatever we can do to keep people from smoking, but they're going to say that this is going to kill small businesses. So can you address that, just so that?
Absolutely. The tobacco industry does depend on retailers to distribute their product and to distribute their tobacco. What's really great, I think, what was done in San Francisco, and I believe it was Supervisor Eric Marr who introduced Healthy Retail SF, which provided, I think, $60,000 in loans for stores, and many have taken advantage of this to reconfigure their merchandise, think about healthier products. They can actually make more money on some of the other products than they would on tobacco, and many stores have successfully done this. So personally, I think we'd like to see more of that legislation to happen to support the retailers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And if you guys have any materials, you're welcome to leave it on our literature table in the back. And next, I would like to bring up the opponents for Proposition B.
Hello, everyone. So I understand the opposition is trying to make everyone think that they are in this to protect children and make sure they don't smoke, but that's just not true. We're the ones that want to make sure that no one under the age of 21 gets access to tobacco. We just have different ways of going about that. So the way we go about that is the funding through Reynolds, and Reynolds is actually one of the biggest financial contributors to the Boy Scouts of America Early Tobacco Prevention Fund. They started the Weed Card program, and currently the city of San Francisco has a 96% compliance rate. We also are proud to announce that we have the endorsement of the Brownie Mary Democrats Club, as well as the Center for Economic Independence of Women and Children. And for the other side, to say that retailers aren't smart enough to not sell to someone who's underage, I mean, obviously they're not going to do it. It's insult on my friend Miriam, and it's insult on any retail worker. They know the rules. They know the steep fines. They will get penalized. They can lose their license for up to 90 days if they do. But I can have Miriam speak a little bit more about that.
Hi folks, my name is Miriam. I'm here representing the Arab American Grocers Association. For identification, I'm also a small business commissioner with the city. My family has a corner store not too far away. To understand the weight of this, about half of our members, which is about 200 businesses, will be put out. Hookah lounges are going to be out of business. Vape shops out of business. Convenience stores, ethnic import stores that sell hookah, they're going to be gone. This is about gentrification. Corner stores are the last places that offer credit if you don't have a buck. This is in line with kind of what I see the Democratic Party on a national level doing, selling out the working class. I mean, we need to have an economic dimension to this, folks. This is what my community sees as the economic dimension of the immigration ban. The working class Arab and Muslim community in the city, this is where they work, and we're, the 4% that are not in compliance, it's human error. We're not, trying to represent, we're not trying to force automation into our industry. We're trying to keep San Francisco welcome to, historical trades like merchants and mom and pop shops. So this is what I'm speaking on behalf of No on E. Thank you.
All right, do we have any questions? Chair Campos.
I'm just going to ask the same question that I asked the proponents of this, which is, I asked a question about the impact on small businesses, and their response is that the city provides assistance so that those retailers can sell something else where they can actually make perhaps even more money.
So to give you a sense of how that's not an accurate perception of retail in the city, new retail in San Francisco in the last year was 40% online. You can buy all flavored tobacco products online. They're not checking IDs. I have receipts to prove they'll deliver to your door in San Francisco. We can't compete with Safeway. They have bulk purchasing powers, and they also intimidate distributors not to sell to us. So there's many forces in the market that I'm on the board of the Healthy Retail SF program. It's very limited. Putting new produce in the store is going to bring people in, maybe a new clientele, but to give you a sense of the day-to-day cash value, for us, our licenses are our retirement value. And there's already a law on the books in 2015 that restricts transfer. In my community, we're intergenerational. A transfer of a license to a family member is how we keep our family here. That's not allowed anymore. So to be able to, limit the inventory and still pay the same fees, if you recall, the Arab Spring started with a merchant who was overregulated and, set himself on fire to make a statement. So to give you a sense, if we don't have a pack, like my boyfriend, he's a mechanic. He chews wintergreen chewing tobacco. If in a 15-minute break that he has, we don't have that item, he's not going to come in to buy the rest of the stuff like a fruit salad or a sandwich. Hope that helps answer your question.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Questions from the general public?
I think this is a pretty easy one.
Sure.
So some people have confusion on how they should vote. So could you just describe what a yes vote means and what a no vote means on this?
Yeah, I understand there's been a lot of confusion around that. So what a yes vote means is you want the city to stop selling flavored tobacco. Again, that includes menthol cigarettes, hookah tobacco, vape liquid, e-cigarettes, so anything that's flavored at all. A no vote means you want the city to keep selling flavored tobacco. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank
you.
All right, thank you very much. And again, if you have any materials, please feel free to put them on our literature table in the back. Next up is Proposition I proponent. It's about the relocation of sports teams. So again, it'll be a 2-minute presentation and then questions after that. And we have Alan Jones here presenting.
Good afternoon. My name is Alan Jones. Keep an eye on Proposition I. My ballot measure is been formed out of my frustration with trying to get a point across to City Hall. City Hall stole the Warriors from Oakland. I am a San Francisco resident and have been since 1960. I'm also a Warrior fan. I'm not convinced that most people in San Francisco are into stealing. And for us to bring the Warriors 11 miles closer is not going to make me a bigger sports fan of the Warriors. But then you look at the fact that where do they put it? They put it right across the street to a hospital. People in San Francisco owe a debt of gratitude to UCSF. When AIDS ran through San Francisco, it was UCSF-led doctors who chased it out. And 30 years later, what thanks do we get? The late Mayor Ed Lee threatened UCSF play ball with letting this arena come in, or I'm gonna threaten you, I'm gonna take away some of your tax exempt status. That's not right. There's more to come on this, but I'm saying a vote on yes is basically an apology. We, the people of San Francisco, are apologizing to Oakland for what our city leaders have done. And I'm saying nowhere in the world will you find that a city has apologized to another city for the actions of its government. And I'm saying that that's where we're going to start turning things around, when we admit we did something wrong.
Any questions from DCCC members or members of the public? Petra?
I just got to be the devil's advocate. The Warriors were in San Francisco. They were the San Francisco Warriors, and they played in the Cow Palace, and they moved to Oakland, and now they're moving back. So I don't see the stealing part. I guess I'm missing that.
Okay. First of all, the stealing part is, when do you know how the Warriors left San Francisco? That's one thing. But then you have to look also at the fact that the EIR, Environmental Impact Report, if the Warriors had come over here and had not had the interference of City Hall, then I wouldn't have nothing to complain about. Okay. It is the fact that there was an awful lot of shuffling of papers to get the Warriors here. That's theft in the way I see it. And I'm saying that my campaign will reveal that theft.
Okay. Any other questions? Not? Thank you very much.
There was one. I'm sorry, you missed it.
Sorry.
Sorry, can you just talk, so I hear